Hello and welcome to video 4 of your training. In this video we're going to cover long trades. We're going to give you some real examples of long trades and cover the rules so that you clearly understand how to make a buy trade with this particular trading system. So let's just start with the rules here. Largely these are the same as they were for short trades. The difference is of course that they're reversed. So in this case we're looking for two criteria again, but instead of looking for red bars we're going to look for two white bars. So we need the last two bars on the chart to be white, and that's the criteria 1 that we need to meet. And then once we've found those, we need to ensure that the EMA is pointing upwards. When the EMA is pointing up, we assume we're in an uptrend, and this is our second criteria. At that point, we need to look for an entry point. Our entry point comes when the first bar price crosses above the EMA and closes above it. And then at that point, we wait for the second bar to break through the first bar's high point, and that will be our entry point. So just taking a look on a chart here, finding a trade, we need to establish that we have two white bars. So we've got two bars that are white on this chart right after the red bar here. We need to establish that the EMA 14 is pointing upwards, and in this case it is. The EMA is pointing upwards. It's actually just turned from flat to up, but it had a slight upslope before. And then we need to look for our entry point. And again, as we're entering this trade, we first look that the first bar crossed over the EMA and closed above it. And looking at this bar here, the price point did close above the EMA. And then we wait for the second bar to break through the high point of the first bar, which it did. And that becomes our entry point. At that point, we enter the trade. And then once we're in the trade, this trade themselves are fairly automated. We set a stop loss at 100 pips, and again this is for the daily charts. When we get to video 5 I'll talk about some shorter time frames, but don't use 100 pip stops on a 4-hour or 1-hour chart if you decide to trade those. And we can exit the trade in one of two ways. We can either set a take profit to 2 times the stop, so if we were trading the daily charts we would set it to 200 pips. Or we can move the stop loss to the break-even point once we are 200 pips profitable and trail the stop at 200 pips. When you're starting out, again, the 2 times the stop method or method of reasoning is the simplest way to do it. As you gain more experience, you might want to trail your stop. It can help you gain more profits. So let's just take a look at a trade example in the presentation, and then I'll show you a couple of long trade examples on the charts themselves. So we need to look that the two criteria have been met. We need to first find two white bars. And looking here, we've got our criteria. We've got two white bars. The EMA must be pointing upwards, and in this case it is. And then we look for our entry point. The first bar has crossed over the EMA, and the price has closed above it. And then we wait for the price to break through the high point of that first bar with the second bar, which happened here. And at that point, we enter the trade. Once we're in the trade, we set a stop loss to 100 pips, and we set a take profit to 200 pips. So looking at this particular trade on the charts, we would have entered at this point here at 1.4015. We would have set our stop loss to 1.3915, and we would have set a take profit to 1.4215. And in this case, the trade moved in our favor. It took about 7 days' time for us to hit the take profit level, but it did hit the take profit level, and the trade was profitable. Let's take a look at a couple of examples in MetaTrader, and then you'll have a better overview of how to make a buy trade using this system. Okay, so looking at an example trade here, we're looking at the US dollar Japanese yen on a daily chart. And our first criteria that we need to look for when we're making a buy trade or a long trade is that we have two white bars. And we do right here. I'm looking at this bar and that bar. We have two white bars. And then we also need to establish that the EMA 14 is pointing upwards. And of course, in this case, it is. And at that point, we look for our entry point. We look to see that the first bar we were looking at has crossed through the EMA 14 and has closed above it, and in this case it did. And then we wait for the second bar to break through the high point of the first bar, and that becomes our entry point. So in this case, on this trade, our entry point would have been 90.37. And when we enter that trade, we set a stop loss 100 pips back, so our stop loss in this case would have been 89.37, and we set a take profit 200 pips ahead at 92.37. In this case, the trade moved in our favor right away. and it took about 10 days, but we did hit our take profit level here. The alternative exit strategy we could have used would be to wait until we were 200 pips profitable in the trade and then move our stop loss to the break-even point and then trailed that stop at 200 pips. In this case, since we hit our take profit level here and then a few days later it reversed, we probably would have stopped out at this point and we wouldn't have made as much on this trade. But as you learn more about the system, the alternative exit strategy can help you earn more profits. And this trade itself is an excellent example of making a 200 pip profit in just about 7 days for this trade, I guess. And looking at another example, I'm looking at the US dollar daily chart again, Euro US dollar daily chart. And we need to look for our criteria to find a long trade opportunity. So we need to look for 2 white bars, which we have here. And we need to establish that we are in an uptrend with the second criteria, that the EMA 14 is in fact pointing up. And again, that's right here, it is pointing up. So at that point, we just need to find our entry point. We look at the first white bar to establish that it has crossed through the EMA 14 and has closed above it, and in this case it has. And then on the second bar, we wait for the price point to break above the first bar's high point, and that becomes our entry point. So on this trade, our entry point would have been 1.4335. We would have went long on the trade at that point, and we would have set our stop loss 100 pips behind to 1.4235. And we would have set a take profit 200 pips ahead, 2 times our initial stop. So our take profit level would have been 1.4555. And in this case, the trade moved in our favor. And in 2 days' time, actually, we hit our take profit level. This would have been one of those cases where you would have actually made more if you trailed your stop. As an alternative exit strategy, as you hit this 200 pip profit level, you could have moved your stop to the break-even point and then trailed the stop at 200 pips behind. And in this case, you would have stayed in this trade for about 7 or 8 days more and almost doubled the profit that you made on it. But again, when you're starting out, the easiest exit strategy to use is simply to set a take profit level that is 2 times the level of your stop. So there's another excellent trade example, and in this case we profited 200 pips in just 2 days. Okay, now that you understand how to use this system with both short trades and long trades, we've given you the rules for both buy and sell trades, and we've walked through some examples of both. You should move on to video 5. We're going to talk about time frames, currency pairs, and money management for this system, or some more advanced ideas such as money management. And then you should also work on practicing both short trades and long trades with this system. Doing so will help you get a better feel for it and ensure that you make the right trading decisions when you're using this system. For now, move on to video 5 and finish your training videos with time frames, currency pairs, and money management.